Hi, and welcome to another success story. Today we have a wonderful gentleman called Escott, who I met sort of online at first via Facebook, but really liked his content and everything he was putting out there. So we're going to ask Phil some questions. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, mate. It's lovely to be live with you, or recording with you and actually see you rather than typing all the time.
Yes, it is good. And you probably noticed that we share a similar heritage. We're both in the UK. So anyway, right. So first question, I always ask this, Phil. What made you become a carnivore?
Wow, it was a long journey because I was sort of 30 years plant-based and swapping vegetarian and veganism and writing books on plant-based diets. And what made me get into carnivory was a sort of 3-year journey through keto and whatever after 2010, when I ended up completely crippled with rheumatoid arthritis. And I just couldn't move, and then went down the predictable vegan route and just ended up emaciated and with kidney stones from the oxalates, and not much change in the joints. And then I discovered Natasha Campbell McBride and her GAPS diet. And that was very helpful. But it was probably 2015. I thought, do you know what? I feel better on the days where I just don't have any veg with the fatty meat. Mm-hmm. And I started to notice a few other people, and websites like Zero Carb Zen, is it? Yes, eat meat, drink water. And I saw some great success stories, and I tried it. And it was wonderful. I was able to come off the low-dose naltrexone that I'd been on for a bit. And just as an experiment, really, I'd pretty much healed it by 2013 and wrote my book, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. Because it was. I mean, these times where you get so sick, it just wakes you up to such beautiful things. And it was difficult at first because I had to throw out everything I thought I knew about diet and lifestyle and accept that I'd been a proper plonker for about 30 years and found healing in that. And yeah, 2015, so I dropped all the plant matter. And if anybody was right in the mainstream or in the vegan world, particularly considering how ill I went into it with heart issues, kidney issues, fatty liver with cysts, rheumatoid arthritis, and a long list, I'd definitely be dead by now, right? Because all I eat is the most dangerous food that we know that causes cancer and heart disease and everything. And so that's all I eat. And so it's funny when people say you're going to die of this or that. I think, well, mate, I've cured them all. So it's a funny thing. Like a friend of mine once said, isn't it funny that everything that's supposed to be caused by fat and meat completely disappears when all you eat is fat and meat?
That's brilliant. Yeah. Just for those watching who don't know the GAPS diet, because you mentioned that, what did that entail when you did that?
Well, it was Natasha Campbell McBride who wrote a book called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome, and so GAPS, GAPS diet. And she'd figured out that, you heal the gut, which is the root of many autoimmune conditions and all sorts of conditions. But she was mostly writing it for the whole spectrum of ADHD, autism, that kind of thing, which obviously also has, well, not obviously to a lot of people, but, with the amount of sort of our brain, if you like, that runs through our guts, it's kind of obvious that also these things run alongside a leaky gut syndrome. And she had great protocols with all sorts of slow cooked meats and lots of fats and bone broths and things like that. But she was still including vegetables. And so it never quite healed me. But it was very close. It was good. And now if you hear Natasha these days, she's talking a lot more about cutting absolutely all the plants out. I think she's figured it out as well, But it was a great step. It was a good step along the way.
Yes. Now, you said 30 years as a vegetarian vegan, which means you definitely tried it and gave it a good go. Did you do it right?
No, I did it all wrong. The vegans have told me that I did it all wrong. It's funny how the ones that do it right, that tell me how I did it wrong, sometimes even sending me death threats on my YouTube channel, quite often contact me a couple of years later and go, I'm terribly sorry, and you were right, and my arse has blown up, or my joints don't work, or my thyroid's come out, something's gone wrong. I've got no teeth left.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, I did it right. You know, from time to time I did it wrong as well, but yes, I did it right, if you like. But obviously there's no such thing.
See, the great thing about talking to people I've not had the chance to talk to a lot or in depth is to ask the questions that I've always wanted to ask you. So there must have been a point when you thought it was good because you entered into it. So what made you start the vegan or vegetarian way? What was you thinking was going to happen? Or why did you do it?
Well, because I thought that I was so far ahead of the curve, you know, again, ahead of the mainstream thing. But instead of cutting all the plants, I cut all the meat because I was involved in the transcendental meditation brainwashing cult as well. And so, you know, I spent years sitting in full lotus and meditating and doing yoga asanas all the time and that sort of thing. And along with it comes this sort of thing of ahimsa or non-violence, and you mustn't kill animals. You know, nobody realizes about the billions of crop deaths that occur and all that kind of, it doesn't occur to them. And so I was convinced that this was it, and it was the sattvic path, you know, the pure path, and you had to avoid animal products because they lowered your consciousness, all that kind of thing. So when I was vegetarian and I got very sick, obviously I thought, well, what I need to do is to go even more vegetarian, so I better go vegan. That didn't work, so I ended up raw vegan and juicing all this stuff, and I didn't realize that I was just having great big liters of oxalate soup every day and ended up with the kidney stones. And of course all my muscle disappeared, as it always does. You know, in the late 90s I owned and ran a gym and wrote for bodybuilding mags and stuff, and I was really big. And then after that, I ate crap, you know, crappy vegetarian diet, and ended up a really fat bastard by 2009, 2010, and then got really sick. But yeah, the idea was, oh, even more pure, even more alkaline, all of that kind of nonsense, yes. You know, and it never worked. I think the dangerous thing, the most dangerous thing about the vegan path is that it has a honeymoon period. And yes. So when you cut out the seed oils and when you cut out the processed foods and all that kind of thing, and pizzas and Coca-Cola and whatever, I mean, still a lot of them drink that stuff, right? But then you get this point where you do get certain benefits. And that makes you think when 6 months later to a year or 2 years later, everything goes horribly wrong. They think, well, it can't be the diet. Yes. And so the benefits of veganism are probably the worst things about it, I think.
Yes, I understand what you're saying there. So you mentioned your book. So we don't normally plug books, but can you still buy that book now? Where would we go and get that book?
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's on the Satanic Beast Amazon. And that's the only place you can get it. But it's, I get lots of lovely comments about it. It's great. I find people all around the world who've read it and they're saying, oh, you gave me confidence, because the first third of it is about all the fights with the medical system. When you panic and go to them, you know, and you go to these very strange creatures called rheumatologists, who I think probably it's the most useless profession on the planet. You know, as I always say, you know, and I said to my rheumatologist just before he really started shouting at me last time was, if you've got a plumber around and a pipe's burst and it's spraying all over the room, and the plumber says, I've no idea why that's happened and I can't fix it, would you pay him? And the rheumatologist actually said no. And I said, well, you don't know what causes arthritis and you don't know how to fix it. Why am I here? You know, and he gets very cross, of course. But so the first third of it is all about the sort of fights with the medical system and all these ridiculous letters I wrote to doctors and stuff like that and all the stories of it. And the second third is about how I came through the journey of finding out about healing, you know. And then the third part of it is really a sort of more of an emotional, spiritual sort of side of it, really, of sort of resistance to awakenings and just how the emotions connect with certain parts of the body and create those symptoms. But then it's a leaky gut will sort of trigger those symptoms in different parts of the body. So the way I see it is almost like a good gut integrity is what protects us from our own emotional imbalances. So that's why it's such a fascinating journey. And I think with clients that I have, that, you know, once you've got them on the right diet and got the light sorted so that they've, you know, they're not having lots of artificial light at night, and getting lots of sun, getting grounded, getting vitamin D up, all these basic things that save you from anything, really. Once you've done that, then the proper detective work starts of, you know, what's going on with the emotions? Why are you not happy? Why is it gone into that knee and not the other knee? You know, why is your thyroid gone, but your kidneys are fine, or vice versa, you know? And you can often find very fascinating emotional connections. So the third part of it is sort of my journey through that. And I think, you know, because as you know, healing's on all levels. It's not just about diet.
No, it isn't. Very true. Sleep and sunlight and social contact, all those sort of things. But we won't go down that route. So you had pretty bad arthritis. So can you tell us about the arthritis? Where was it? How was your day when it was a really bad day? Was you able to walk? What extent basically did you have it?
It was really bad. It was, you know, as I look back, it was early 90s when I was playing drums in bands and my wrist started hurting, and they diagnosed it as Kienbock's disease, you know, the crumbling of the lunate bone and avascular necrosis. And if they'd have diagnosed it as psoriatic arthritis back then, I'd have probably taken the meds. So I'm glad they didn't. But it just sort of used to get a bit painful every now and again. And then I noticed that the range of movement was down. And, you know, that carried on. By 2013, I had sort of about that much movement in it. And I managed to work on it once the inflammation was out and get all the movement back that way. But you can still see that way. It doesn't, you know, it's solid. And I got one knee left like that as well. No inflammation, but, you know, thickened synovium, this and that, problems in there that I'm too lazy to address, mostly because there's no pain anymore. But at its worst, it was very sudden, actually. We'd just come back from a holiday in Thailand where I was absolutely living on ibuprofen and paracetamol, you know, absolutely chugging them all day. And because my back was so painful, and I'd already had a dose of iritis, which, you know, the horrible inflammation in the eye that goes very much along with things like ankylosing spondylitis, that kind of thing, and arthritic conditions. But I didn't connect it really. And it was only in the sort of October, November 2010 when suddenly one ankle just blew up. And I thought, oh, it's an old injury from falling off a climbing wall, you know, and then the other ankle blew up, and then one knee, and then my back just wouldn't move. And then the sacroiliacs kicked off again, you know. And it was at the worst point. It was just broken glass in the joints. I couldn't really walk, you know. I wouldn't go to the toilet for a piss. I'd sit there on the sofa and do it in a jam jar. I mean, it's that bad. I'd sort of struggle to the toilet if I needed a poo or something, but I'd often even sleep downstairs because I just couldn't face the stairs. It was absolutely horrific time. And that probably lasted for about a year. And then I kind of figured it out, what was going on.
And what did you figure out? What did you do?
Well, I figured out that I was just taking in too much plant matter. And as soon as I stopped that, but I only discovered that really, as many people do, from extended fasting. You know, I was constantly doing like 3-5 day fasts. One I remember was 11 days. And I just fast all the time because after the second or third day, then I could run around again. And it was just heaven, you know, and I ended up with pretty much a fear of food because every time I ate anything, there was horrific agony. And it was funny actually and then I ended up at 5'10", having come down from like 16 stone or whatever. I ended up about 9 stone. And I ended up about 10 stone. It was when I went keto and started cold thermogenesis and burned the last bit off it, I ended up about 9 stone, and then it crept up again. But I remember one day, I'd just come off that 11-day fast, which was my last long water fast. And I discovered about the GAPS diet. And I thought, right, it's a whole new start now. When I come off this fast, I'm on to just meat and fat, and everything's going to be perfect. And I remember on that day, I thought, right, that's the last day. I've had enough, feeling a bit weird now. Got to eat. And I roasted a chicken, and I got some bone broth, you know, that I'd made, and some butter and salt and some white pepper, and just smashed this roast chicken up into everything. And it was just, God, it was so good. I thought, finally some food, you know, rather than lentils and juiced spinach and all that crap. And I sat outside on the lawn, and I sat on this rug, and I thought, this is going to be the best meal of my life, but I'm not going to be able to eat much. But it was so nice. I could eat loads. And I thought, I'm going to have some more. And I couldn't get up off the rug. I was in so much pain. It was that fast that it hit it. And obviously I hadn't healed the gut. And I realized now it was chicken and butter. You know, I mean, in the early stages of healing the gut, you can't have this. Chickens haven't been fed what they're supposed to eat. It's just like eating corn, really, you know, and high linoleic acid in the fat, high deuterium, everything, you know, in there. And I know all that now, but at the time it was my lowest ever moment because I thought, I can't eat anything. I'm going to have this for the rest of my life, you know, and I hadn't figured it out. And these are the points that I see in people's healing. You know, a lot of the people I talk to, who I do consults with, they come to me and they go, carnivore diet isn't working, you know, and they're desperate because they see all this healing in other people. And it's always the same kind of thing. They're eating too much protein, not enough fat, if they're eating just beef and lamb, or they're eating chicken and pork all the time, or they're eating egg whites, or they're eating dairy or something like that. But, you know, somebody with diabetes, that would be great. It would get rid of it as long as they didn't have a leaky gut or something else. It's not optimal, but you know, if you've got raging autoimmunity, it's never going to work. And then they get desperate. And I can see it exactly the same as I went through. And so, you know, you can help people through those kind of stages. I'm sure you've seen that kind of thing as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the time. So are you still offering coaching now? Do you coach people now for this sort of thing?
That's what I really do for a living.
Yeah.
You know, I have that big carnivore group online, the 100% Carnivore and Beyond, isn't it? On Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I have another Facebook group called, and it's a mouthful, Rheumatoid and Psoriatic Arthritis, Mitochondrial Health and Carnivory. Yeah. I just wanted to get it all in one. I was thinking, how do I get it all in one? How am I going to... But anyway, that's the one where I sort of filter people off to if they've got the sort of arthritic conditions. I set it up because I got thrown off every single arthritis Facebook group, including the natural healing ones, for suggesting that you can possibly heal inflammatory arthritis. They get so upset if you say that you might have succeeded at that, you know, and so they throw you off. It's the age of censorship, isn't it? So I thought, you know, sod this, I'm going to set up my own Facebook group, and it's great. And so I can actually say what I like without people throwing me off the group. And we have some lovely healing stories in there. I just love consulting with people. I love these people I meet because, you know, when you go to the doctor, they say, you've got this horrible autoimmune condition, it's incurable, and you're going to have to take these pills for the rest of your life that might blow up your liver and detach your retinas and all that sort of thing. Although they don't tell you that straight away. And it's a horrible feeling. You walk out of there in a horrible state of depression. You know, when somebody comes to you, you've got to say, this is going to be exciting. You've got this, you can heal, and you are going to learn so much, and you're going to come out way better the other side and be in charge of your own health. And they're smiling at the end of the consults. That's what I love. You know, you can give them a totally different perspective on it, which of course, all the traditional people tell me, you know, I'm a dangerous quack and I'm giving vulnerable people hope. But when you see the healing stories,
yes, exactly,
it makes up for it.
It does. I mean,
they're all useless anecdotes, aren't they, Steve?
Yeah, I got 300 useless anecdotes. You know, 300 of them at least. So I think we're similar in that we did our own thinking. I don't think you know this about me, but when I was 23, I was told I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I was 50. Shown a very convincing X-ray of my hip. And there was no doubt whatsoever. I'm 57, by the way, now, on no meds and all that sort of stuff. So, and I was still playing soccer at 50. So people can be told things categorically and actually told things in a way and shown images where you just could roll over and say, right, well, that's my fate. Well, obviously you didn't. You went to think about it. And I think part of the reason I want to do these sort of videos is because I'm trying to make people make their own decisions and do their own research, those sort of things. Exactly what I did. You know, I reversed lots of things once I went low carb. I was pre-diabetic. I had a colonoscopy, cataracts, you know, and I was a non-smoking. I know you're a drummer, a musician, so none of this applies to you, but I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. You know, I didn't go out partying. I was a personal trainer. And at 49, I was a state. You know, I was getting thick, fatter, sicker and everything. So I, you know, started to qualify in other areas, by the way. I qualified as a diabetic specialist. And that's when it hit me. Hang on a minute, we keep talking about carbohydrates, real simple thing to read, and we're dosing for carbohydrates. Why don't we just release these carbohydrates from our diet? Let's get rid of them, then we don't need so much insulin. So that's my story. Anyway, it's not about me, this is about you, but I wanted you to know we're quite similar in that way.
Oh,
so,
well done.
Sorry?
Well done.
Thank
Brilliant.
you. So you went through this phase where you were really, you've just eaten the chicken and the butter and you were in pain. So what happened next? How did you get to the right way of eating? What was your process?
Well, it was really trial and error, because there wasn't so much out there about, just eating ruminant animals and why, or at least I didn't find it. Mm-hmm. Reading between the lines, it's there on Zero Carb Zen and stuff. But in recent years, I've got to know, it's lovely in this community. You can just get to know all the amazing people, Sean Baker and whatever. I've been on his podcast a few times, and you get to know all these lovely people, and particularly Zofia Clements at Paleo Medicina in Hungary, and she came to our carnivore conference. She was one of the speakers. I got to know her really well. And you see the successes that they have with the really high fat diets, and just that, they're not addressing anything else, light, emotions, nothing. They think, I'm a load of old woo-woo, really, when I start talking about that. I think Jeremy Ayres and I, Jeremy, who works in, part of the Human Unleashed team and whatever, and we had her along to the carnivore conference, and she gave a great talk about all the clinical results that they're having there, and we sort of edged her along maybe towards the sort of emotional thing too. But she's just been such an inspiration, and the results she's had, and the strictness that they have at Paleo Medicina in the early stages has really inspired me. And I've seen a great deal of difference. Instead of just saying somebody just eat stuff off an animal, there's a little bit more to it than that to start with, or rather a little less to it than that at the start.
Yes.
You've got to be very strict, stay ruminant animal only, and it just absolutely works wonders. So I just started to see certain little tales of it on the Facebook groups and whatever, and so I tried it, and it was just miraculous. And I probably went 4 years carnivore on, beef, lamb, and butter, and then, because of my missus being diagnosed with Graves' disease and Zofia saying you can't even have a molecule of dairy a month if you're going to reverse this, I gave up the butter with her, because she was going, I can give up all the plants, but no butter, no. And so I thought, I'll give it up, but I'm fine. My joints don't hurt. And I was eating the same kind of calories. I just swapped butter for tallow. And I had some sinus issues, and they cleared up. And then the abs popped out again. And I was like, wow, man, I've done nothing except drop the dairy out. It was extraordinary. And, when you see the subtle changes that you can make with massive results, and it's taught me a lot really since then of, how to get people really optimal when they're at the beginning stages of their healing. So yeah, that's how I came by the actual sort of full carnivore thing, with absolutely no dairy, no chicken, no pork, that kind of thing, no eggs. That was it.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize that butter is dairy. I mean, that's one of the things that I find quite surprising, because we're quite well educated now with the way we, talk about food, but they don't realize that butter is dairy. But anyway, so it obviously comes as an issue for some people. I did want to expand a little. Sorry, go on. Go on.
Just an aside to that one. A lot of people don't realize that ghee is dairy. They think that they've taken all the dairy out and it's the pure fat and whatever. And like Zofia said, you can't take a molecule of that stuff after when you're really sensitive. And ghee is still just as inflammatory as anything else. So it is basically, if you think in our history, I like to always refer it back ancestrally. I would like to have seen the Native American Indians running around trying to milk buffalo. They'd have got trampled pretty quickly. It didn't happen. We didn't really have dairy for a long time. There are certain herding tribes like the Maasai who have dairy, but people don't realize that dairy is extremely different from the pasteurized crap that you get in the supermarkets, the A1 dairy, you know. They got A2 dairy straight out the cow, you know, and they're out there with their feet on the ground and they're drinking blood milk and eating meat, and they're absolutely fine, you know. So that's a different thing. It's not the skimmed milk you get from Asda.
No. So yeah, I noticed you mentioned some weight loss. Now, weight loss, I don't focus on weight loss. Weight loss seems to be a side effect of healing, actually. Or I talk about fat loss and body composition more. But there will be people that heard you mention cold thermogenesis, and you lost an extra bit of weight. Did you have some weight that you really wanted to shift and you tried some cold therapy, or could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, at that point, because I was, you know, about 140 pounds, you know, I was like 10 stone. And so I wasn't really looking to lose any more weight. It's just that I went keto, and because I'd lost all the muscle on veganism,
yeah,
I started getting really cold baths and eat keto, and the last of the fat melted off, because, you know, getting in the cold really does burn fat. And I ended up absolutely ripped, you know, at 50 years old in 2012, with sort of a real defined set of abs. And this is something I'd been training for all my life, thinking one day I'll get a set of abs, and I never did. And suddenly, lying on the sofa, eating like 4,000 calories of fatty meat a day and doing absolutely nothing, I ended up with this set of abs. And I thought, hold on a minute, the whole of diet and exercise theory is complete nonsense.
Yes. As a personal trainer, you know what? I had so few successes when I was a high carb personal trainer. And as soon as I went to this way of eating, wow, you know, just like I say, 300 success stories plus over the last 2 years. So, right, there are going to be people that are going to push you on this. So did you literally put ice cubes in a bath and sit in a bath? Is that what you did?
Well, no, I never put ice cubes in the bath. Well, actually, I did a few times. It didn't seem to make much difference. It was actually over the winter of probably 2011, 2013. It was a really cold winter as well. I would just run the English freezing cold water, you know, out the tap. It really is incredibly cold. And I'd go sit in the bath. But I got obsessed with it. I loved it because it would take the inflammation out. If I had inflammation, I would sort of limp into the bathroom, get in a cold bath for 10 minutes and just dance out. It was that quick. And, you know, it's not a cure, but it really does take the inflammation out. It does a load of other good things. But I was loving it. I was going on all these walks in driving sleet and taking my top off and rolling around in the snow and training my feet to be able to walk barefoot in the snow. And I loved it. I got really obsessed with it. It is quite addictive after a while because it gives you such a high, really, you know, when you do a lot of it. I don't have that motivation anymore. I don't have any pain, so I don't have that motivation. But I do wear probably a layer less than anybody else in the winter around me. And I'll switch the shower to cold for a couple of minutes at the end, you know, but I don't do those extensive cold baths. And I don't think you really have to, but it does really enliven the system. And, you know, if anybody's interested, just look into Wim Hof and see him, you know. I mean, you know, when you get to swimming under polar ice with your eyeballs freezing and stuff, so you can't see anything, that's some serious shit. But I never did anything like that. But it was fantastic, and it really does burn fat off beautifully, especially if you're in ketosis. So yeah, I think in total I lost about 90 pounds or something like that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so what are your views on showers compared to baths? If you had a cold shower, cold bath, what would you think would tip the balance? What would be the better way of doing it, do you think?
I would think a cold bath, because a shower, it's actually more unpleasant. You know, there's an initial shock when you get in the bath, and then you kind of get used to it. And then the point comes where you start shivering and you get out. You know, don't go past the shivering point. It's not about reducing your core temperature. It's about creating heat inside, you know, thermogenesis. It's about creating heat. And it makes you very cold adapted. So you take the winter a lot better. And of course, you know, when you're adapted to whatever environment is outside, you are more in tune with your circadian biology, and you get fewer common winter illnesses that have been rebranded these days.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
But I think that the showers are a little bit horrible, because they're always, it's always the cold on you. You sort of develop a bit of warm around you in the bath, and then you can sort of move and get it cold again. I don't know. I mean, I just try it out if somebody's interested in doing it. See which one you like best.
I mean, I often say to people that want to know the science, don't worry about the science because it does work. But your mitochondria, your ATP is not working on movement; it's working on warming you up. You know, it's doing that. So you will be burning. I don't like burning, isn't it? You're oxidizing substrates to warm you up, and that will be fat. I can assure you, that's going to do that. But it's also great for injuries. I'm a semi-professional soccer player way back, and I used to have very bad knees, and I went middle distance running when I was doing all the healthy eating, you know, like the skim milk and porridge and orange juice and all that sort of stuff. And my knees were always inflamed and always in pain and stuff like that. So in the last 7 years, I've had no, it's not come back. I've lost all those pains. I've lost back pains, everything. And I haven't looked back for 7 years. I haven't had a cold, a sniffle, a day off work and all that sort of stuff. So you've obviously been doing this a long time. Have you had any repercussions? Has there been periods where you thought, hang on a minute, this is not as good as it was, I've got to tweak it, or has it just been improvement?
From what I've seen in my own healing journey and in people who I've worked with, the healing journey is never completely straight. Mm-hmm. You know, the body does these weird things. There's no straight lines in nature, you know. No. And so, yeah, some odd things happen. But, you know, I'll cheat now. I don't eat any vegetables or anything like that, you know, but I've found that for the first time in my life, I can drink alcohol. So I've been having fun with that, you know. Whereas when I was veggie and vegan, the doctors used to do blood tests and ask me if I was an alcoholic, and I had a fatty liver with cysts on it. Now I eat nothing but meat and drink a load of brandy. My liver results are absolutely perfect. The cysts have gone, you know. So I think, well, you know, I'll be like a teenager and have a bit of alcohol now. So there are sort of things that I do now that maybe cloud the issue, but, you know, no joint issues really, no joint issues. But I'll tell you a secret, actually. This was an interesting one. About a year ago, I had this stomach issue. I mean, it was really bad. It was like knives in the stomach. It was nothing like I've experienced since dysentery in Morocco in 1980. And I had this horrendous pain. I was actually shitting blood for a week, you know, and I couldn't, a load of weight dropped off, everything. Never known anything like it. I don't know what it was, you know, whether it was salmonella or something. I don't know what the hell it was. But then it sort of cleared up. And 2 days later, I had the worst flare I've ever had in my whole life. It was worse than 2010. I couldn't move. I couldn't move my neck. I couldn't move anything. I had fevers. My God knows what my CRP was, but I'd never go anywhere near a doctor. I mean, it must have been, I talked to my good friend, a great cardiologist. He's a gastroenterologist, and Pranavan Yoganathan. Have you seen him? He turns up on Sean's podcast and whatever. And I was chatting to him about it, and he said, "No, look, you know, which is what I suspected, is that when you have something like that, it sometimes happens after cholera. People get, you know, huge reactive arthritis flares because the gut's gone. You know, it's made the gut leaky within about a week, and something's gone wrong in there. So the proteins are going through, and even eating a steak would be just tremendous pain. And I thought, this is embarrassing. I'm supposed to be the arthritis guru. I am stranded on a sofa again. I literally couldn't walk this time. The only use I had for drums was a cymbal stand that I kept next to the sofa so I could actually get to the toilet. You know, it was that bad. Unbelievable. But there was no panic this time. It was like, right, I know what's happened and I've got to fix it. But weirdly, how I was eating before even was triggering it. And so I had to dry fast completely, you know, no food, no water, 3-4 days, reintroduced a bit of water. And then it was just bone broth with some bits of tallow floating in it and bits of beef fat. I could take that as long as there was no protein, because even when the gut's leaky, even if you take really good protein that would never make the gut leaky, unlike glutens and whatever, it can get through and cause a reaction. And so, but I couldn't even take that. And then about a week in, I tried a steak, didn't hurt anymore. And then it took about 3 weeks, you know, to set this on a proper healing path. And there was a few niggles after that for a couple of months. But it took me basically 3 weeks to get to the point that it took me probably 3-4 years previously.
Yes.
And it just showed the power of it, you know? It was amazing. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you found this, but it's a lot more difficult to get people to heal who have taken a whole load of meds and stuff.
Yes.
You know, they can heal, but then you're fighting against the problem and the meds. But with this, obviously, I hadn't had any meds, and my gut was probably pretty good beforehand. So it healed up very quick. But it's amazing how quick you can heal it, because imagine if I had that in that state, you know, somebody probably putting me in a wheelchair and taking me to the doctors, the amount, I'd still have it now. And I'd be on a whole load of meds, and I'd probably be about, you know, 20 stone or something from steroids, with a great big head like that, like a space hopper, you know, that steroids give you. And all of that awful stuff. And yet, you know, with this approach, just subtraction, you know, I have an online autoimmunity course called the subtraction method. And to me, it's all about taking things away. It's so much more powerful than adding things. You know, you take things away and the body can heal. And the ultimate elimination, obviously, is dry fasting. And so that was my only option to start with, because the gut was so trashed. And that was a really interesting one. But I mean, that was a huge blip. And now I'm absolutely fine again. You know, I had a gig last night. I've got a big rehearsal tonight. I've got a gig tomorrow night. I've got a big all-day event before. You know, I'm fine. I'm great at 59 now. I can do what I want. But that was a really interesting experience for me, to realize that once the body has had that reaction, it always remembers how to do it. You know, so if the gut gets leaky again, you're going to be in trouble, but you can fix it, you know, and people, if they know and they have the confidence, because I had perfect confidence of what to do about it. And there wasn't 1 second where I ever thought of going to a doctor. Because it was just laughable. I mean, one of the neighbors, I limped to the door and he brought a parcel. He said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Oh, I've just got this back again for a bit." "Oh, have you been to the doctor?" And I thought, I've never even thought of that. No. The last place I'd go.
Yep, same here.
But yeah, so that's it. You know, I mean, you see people have these blips, and it's all a matter, I think, when you consult with them, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure you tell people that you've got to have confidence. It's the most important thing, to get confidence, see what's happening. If something goes a little bit backwards and then comes back, that's fine. I love that meme that Ken Berry put out, you know, Dr. Ken Berry, a carnivore doc. And he put this thing out saying, if you ask, is a carnivore or keto diet good for fill in the blank? He said, why don't you just change it for natural human diet?
Yes.
So is a natural human diet good for my thyroid or whatever? And then it sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? You know?
Yes.
Once you educate people on what we actually ate and how, you know, all food is a challenge to the body, but plants are but meat is probably the least of a challenge. So then you can see, you know, how we've got a gut like a hyena, all that kind of thing, and have confidence that that's going to make you heal. But you know, we're decades into these problems, and you don't turn it around in a week.
No, you don't. I wish we had longer. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, but maybe we might have to do 2 parts of this interview. So what is a typical sort of week or a typical day of eating for you now? And do you include fasting every week? What's your protocol?
Mainly crunchy nut cornflakes, pizza in the evening. No, that's how I have eaten at my worst. And it's no wonder I got that sick. 5 bowls of crunchy nut cornflakes.
Oh, wow, yes.
God. Yeah, Kellogg's anti-masturbation cornflakes.
Yes.
That story, brilliant story. We won't get into that this time. The origin of the Kellogg's cereal company. Yes. Well, what I eat, whatever's lying around. I mean, we just have meat, really. I mean, I have some fruit in the house, which I put in the kids' lunch boxes so that the dinner ladies don't report me to social services. And it always comes back uneaten. So we do buy fruit, which we like to leave in the fridge until it goes rotten in the compost bin, you know, compost drawer, and then in the bin it goes. But mostly I did a load of lamb and beef mince. That's what the kids like to make burgers out of. Lamb burgers, very nice. Steaks, any roast meats, a lot of slow cooked meats. We go to grass-fed farm and we get a load of the cheaper cuts that are pretty tough if you roast them, but if you put them in a slow cooker, they're lovely, and you know, you can just pull them out, mix them with a bit of bone broth, and you've got a great stew that takes seconds. I mean, how easy is this diet? How quick is it? You know, there's no sort of rice burned on the bottom of pans and stuff like that. They used to spend hours washing up, and you know, you just put something in, fry it up, and eat it. So easy. So for me, I usually eat once or twice a day, usually about maybe something like 10 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon, or once about 2 o'clock, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what is it now? We're in England. It's like 5:15, and I realized I haven't eetten today. So I don't even know. It's funny, isn't it? You sort of sometimes you just go, I don't know. Yeah. Because the energy is so good when you're running on fat.
Yes.
And so yeah, probably 3 times every 2 days I'll eat something like that, and whatever's there. You know, I think it's funny, isn't it? Don't you get asked what the most common question? What do you have for breakfast?
Yes.
Well, I don't need breakfast particularly. No. I don't really have a concept of breakfast. If I'm hungry in the morning, I'll eat in the morning. If I'm not, I won't. And I thought, you know, what are you thinking? You're thinking that, you know, our ancestors sat around in caves thinking, I wish they'd hurry up and invent Cocoa Pops. You know, they ate what they ate. They ate what they'd killed the day before or whatever.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And so that's it. You know, if I want a steak, I'll have a steak. If I want some liver, I'll have some liver. If I want some fish or some oysters, I'll have some of that. You know, just whatever's lying around and whatever I feel like. But basically, that's it. You know, meat, salt, water, white pepper, and a bit of brandy.
Excellent. Phil, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you a bonus question in a minute, but I'm going to wrap this up now because the bonus question might lead to being taken down by YouTube. So, because I don't know how it's going to go. So I'm going to thank you now. And obviously, you know, when I put this out in the links, in the show notes, we'll have links to where you are and how to find you and those sort of things. So thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you for having me on.
So here's a bonus question. I can edit that out now, but if we don't edit, people will understand. So you've got a #1 hit, apparently.
Well, no, not quite yet. Hopefully, I mean, what it was is I've been playing in a band called the Daz Band because of my involvement with the Human Unleashed project, and then what it is now, it turned into really is the redpillrevolution.com, where, you know, we have all sorts of interviews. We have chats about very controversial things that get YouTube channels pulled down, and lots of interviews with other people. Like we have a pharmacist at the moment who's teamed up with us, who used to run a jab center, and I won't mention anything about what he says, but wonderful stuff. Get over to the redpillrevolution.com. But I'd written co-authored that book, The Red Pill Revolution, with my colleagues, Ben Hunt, Graham Norbury, John Gusty, and Jeremy Ayres. And it's just been wonderful to be part of this sort of whole thing with these guys. We get on so well. We have such a laugh, and they're so knowledgeable. You know, every sort of bit of knowledge we don't have in our own knowledge, it gets filled in by somebody else. You know, it's wonderful fun. And I'd written this book, and I had a mutual friend from the carnivore groups who knew about the book and had read the book. And Darren runs the Light paper in England, you know, and he's the editor and founder of the Light paper. And we got introduced at the party, and he started singing this song, you know, you can shove the New World Order up your ass and whatever. And I thought, if this is your song, it's been chanted at all the rallies all around the world, everyone's chanting it. And he said, yeah, I wrote it like 2013. I've been singing it forever, just adding verses of things that the elites might like to fit up their asses. And so I said to him, look, let's do a band. You know, I've got some great musicians. And so we got to be good friends, and I got some musicians together, and we ended up recording it. And we recorded it, we released it after being thrown out of the studio while we were recording it for it being too controversial. We released it on the 10th of December, and it shot right up. I mean, there was no publicity, and it was being censored. I think something funny is happening with it because it kept appearing high in certain charts and then disappearing on the few days afterwards. But it was seen at #1 on the Amazon charts for a while, as we speak now. And then it was creeping up the iTunes charts and Apple. And I'm not really sure what's going on with it, where it is, who's censoring it, because they don't want that to be #1 for Christmas. No. Now, and like it, over at the redpillrevolution.com, you can find out, you can see a page of it with the promo video and all that sort of thing. But I just think it's important now because, you know, whatever's going on with the situation, a lot of people are trying to take our food away. You know, they're trying to feed us all this soy stuff. There's all this veganism push and all that kind of thing. And I think it's really important to do these real silly things and just kind of fight back in the way that you can, because, you know, whatever's going on with all these controversial issues that we won't speak about here, but they are trying to take proper food away that restores the land, and it restores human bodies, and it sequesters carbon if you're into the, you know, the climate change business. So whichever way, whatever you believe, it's still the best for the environment. And, you know, like they say, you know, grass-fed beef is probably the most vegan thing on the menu. Yeah. And that's just a marvelous way to look at it. And I think that I think it's really important, really so important now to have as much information out there at the moment that can actually retain the human diet, so that we can heal. So, you know, for me, that's all part of it. And yeah, we got that song out. Go check it out, and come and visit us at the Red Pill Revolution. And there we go. Lots of content on there.
Yeah, Phil, thank you so much. Thank you.
You are so welcome. It was fun. Let's do it again.
We will.